Hello, and thank you for joining me once again. I am reading The Children of the Law of One and the Lost Teachings of Atlantis by Jon Peniel. We are in chapter 12, part 2 of the reading for today. Okay? I thank you for taking the time to listen. This book, I feel, has many great information in it for the benefit of us all. So, um, listen, re-listen, get the book, read it, reread it, share it, as long as the message gets out there, right? So enjoy. We are on Climbing to Our Crucifixion on page 175. Climbing to Our Crucifixion. As was said earlier, the path that lies before a person who is truly committed to transcending their separate self and returning to universal consciousness can be painful at times. After all, your separate self has surrounded your life with illusions and programming that supports separationness and selfishness. It has created a false person of its own that has the illusion of having its own life. An actual illusion that is alive and living. To be one with the universal spirit again involves killing the false being and all of its selfish, separate illusions and programming. This hurts. It will fight it. It's fighting for its very survival. And you have been thoroughly tricked into believing it is you. So it's like killing yourself, not in a simple task, nor a painless one. It's a path of cross bearing, a purification by fire. And now, Islamic poet once put it this way: like dry wood takes to fire, the truth will come to you. How true if you endure this purification by fire with patience, understanding, and humility. You will come to realize your essential nature and inner being, soul, oneness with the universal spirit. Why? Because the soul is indestructible. And when all else of you is purged and burned away from the suffering you experience, there will be the soul, shining like the sun, emerging from the clouds, making crucifixion fun, at least a little bit easier. It is said that the path is covered with rose bushes. The flowers draw us and offer us pleasure, but attachment to pleasure is a danger here. Try to take the rose and the thorns prick us and cause us to suffer. Have you heard this? Love is a rose, but you better not pick it. Only grows when it's alive. Okay. Love is a rose, but you better not pick it. Only grows when it's on the vine. Handful of thorns, and you know you've missed it. Lose your love when you say the word mine. So true. Here's the good news. Along this path of rose bushes, one can find footprints that were made by the great ones who have gone before us. If we make sure that we walk only in their footsteps, we will avoid many of the pitfalls, the detours, and traps, and the painful mistakes that we will come upon along the way. Humility and unselfish love lighten the burden. Traveling your path is made easier by humility and unselfish love. The greater your degree of humility, the easier and the shorter your path back will be. Spiritual growth can be experienced as agonizing torture that you must endure, or as an enlightened learning experience that you desire and relish. It all depends on you and your attitude. One of my novice students, one who learned the fastest of all thus far, learned so fast just because of humility. She was a total stranger living with the man I was discussing life with. We were talking about what he was capable of doing for the world if he followed his spiritual path. She just listened. As I was leaving and preparing to put on my sandals, she bent over and put them on for me. A simple act, but a gesture of humility that indicated her true greatness. In her It heralded the potential that was within the shining novice. It reminded me of a text I'd read relating to humility during Grandmaster Thought's last lifetime, the Essene's lifetime as Jesus. It was regarding an argument between the students of Jesus in an area In the area and time, it was the custom to wash one's feet when entering a house to get the dirt off and keep the floors clean. It was a tradition and humble honor for the master of the house to wash your feet for you. But Jesus' student, more concerned with their egos, their selfish, separate selves, and their status among his other students, refused to wash each other's feet. So, in a deep sadness over their lack of humility and selfishness, Jesus did it, showing that true spirituality, true greatness, was clothed in humility. His actions exemplified humility even more than his words. He who would be the greatest would be the servant to all, and he who would be the first will be the last. Seeking pleasure brings its mate. Father, I asked, I'm worried, upset, and I guess afraid. What should I do? Is there anything that can make it easier? Anything that I should be doing that I'm not? Should I deny myself urges and live more of the lives of an ascetic? Would that help? I told you, humility is the biggest key. As far as being an ascetic, contrary to how you may feel at times, ours is a gentle, moderate, and balanced path. And this is for a good reason. From the early days of Atlantis, we have learned that extremes such as asceticism can have extreme repercussions and should only be used when such severity is really called for. This situation of yours is not as such. Then, what should I do? First, learn this well, then apply it. Pain and pleasure are one of those dichotomies of the earth's plane. They are thus seemingly opposite, yet they are just the extreme polarities of the same thing, sensation. The range of sensation is traversed by a pendulum that swings within our emotions. If the pendulum swings into pleasure, it will swing back into pain. And the greater the depth of the swing into pleasure, the greater the depth of the return swing into pain. For every self-gratification, there is an equal degree of suffering. This is an aspect of universal law. It is best not to seek pleasure. That doesn't mean avoid it. Just accept it when it comes, but don't pursue it. It keeps the pendulum much more centered. This is one of the ways to make things a little easier. In the end, the love you take is equal to the love you make. Wow, the headlines the editor chose for this chapter could be a great oldies musical infomercial. Back to our discussion. So, I create problems every time I seek to satisfy any of my selfish desires, which I keep doing all the time. So, I keep making more trouble and pain for myself. Of course. But the good news is you are realizing that. When you actually realize that unselfish love is the answer to every problem, you can stop creating more suffering and problems. But as it is with the case and effect karma, you still have to deal with all that you have already created. There's no way to avoid or sidestep it. Actually, you can delay it. You have free will after all. And those of the dark side use delay and avoidance methods all the time. But if you do, you are only delaying, fooling yourself, making even bigger problems by piling up more karma. Like sweeping dirt under a carpet and pretending it's gone. Someday you'll have to clean it. You'll have to clean it up. And the more you've piled up, the more you'll have to clean, eventually. By the way, have you looked under your mat lately? I have. I remembered the note he left me under my mat, and that actually I had been sweeping dirt and dust under it. Again, the bottom line is that the path back to oneness with the universal spirit and attainment of universal consciousness is that of the crucifixion of the selfish, separate self, selfish desire. Painful, yes, but humility eases the pain, makes the journey easier, and unselfish love lightens the burden. Getting down to work. Few have experienced enough or learned enough from their lessons in life to listen to the real truth about the separate self. The light of truth is a threat to the darkness, illusion, deceptions created by the self-body mind. And there are many deceptions and detours along the way, or stepping stones, depending on how you deal with them. I could say the path is merely chanting a special word for 5 minutes a day, and by doing this, you'll be able to see auras, have out of body experiences, read minds, etc. Just send a check or money order for $200 and we'll give you your own magic words right away. But that isn't true, isn't real, and wouldn't really give someone all they need for spiritual growth and enlightenment, becoming one with God. But it would be popular and probably make someone a lot of money. Thus, those who offer something to the selfish desires of people are very popular. There are many personal growth and spiritual growth methods being offered that doesn't threaten the separate selfish self. The most popular religions are the ones that allow the most selfishness and place the least self-sacrificing demands on the person, or are the least threatening to the separate self. Here's a little secret for measuring how real a particular spiritual tradition or growth method is. Just look at how popular it is or unpopular it is. It is not hard. It is not a hard or fast rule, but generally, the smaller or more unpopular the path is, the more it threatens the separate self, and thus the more real truth and growth potential it offers. Enlightenment is not easy and not something that can be bought and sold. It takes constant, conscious effort and application in all aspects of life. The last part of my discussions with Zain about paths dealt with this subject more in depth. You haven't totally answered my first question yet, Father. You mentioned real spiritual paths, which seems to in- intimate, intimate, excuse me, intimate that there are false ones. But you didn't seem to really say it in that context. I know you're very busy today, but but would you tell me why, please, if you have the time? Excuse me. I don't have the time, but there is a sundial over there if you really need it. No, seriously, Father. Seriously, seriously. Okay. There are definitely purely false spiritual paths, but even some of those offer something real. Then there are the other paths that aren't semi-false, in that they are not the person's ultimate true path. These may be just temporary, yet important, part of a person's entire spiritual path, or they may become a trap, depending on the individual's level of consciousness, sincerity, or choices. Some traditions, paths, or methods are traps, side traps, excursions off the seeker's real path that a seeker can get caught up in. Nevertheless, people can move on through these experiences as part of their path. As I said earlier, like stepping stones along the way. Some people will go right on through such traps onto more truly spiritual paths if they have the proper unselfish spiritual attitude. It all is depending on the individual's ideas and applications within such circumstances. Then there are those who set up their own traps and are attracted to and attracted by false spiritual paths. For instance, if you are only interested in appearing to be spiritual, or just interested in spiritual trappings, like auras, psychic powers, channeling, and such, then what we are saying here will not be of much interest to you. But there are plenty of things out there that will. That is not to say that auras, etc., are false. Of course, these things exist, but they are minor parts of the more important whole, and they should be side effects, outgrowths of an unselfish spiritual life. But I have always been fascinated by such things. In fact, I had some unusual abilities as a child. Is that wrong for me to be interested in them? No. But while you were interested in such things, were you not even more obsessed with finding real love and people of kindness, gentleness, compassion, and harmlessness? Yes. Now that I think about it, that was really my primary goal and drive. And that is why you had powers even as a child. Spiritual phenomena should not be a primary focus of interest, lest they become stumbling blocks and a means of avoiding real spiritual development. And the only way you can have such abilities without abusing them and causing the effects of such abuse are to first become a harmless, unselfishly loving entity, one who will use or not use such abilities in a positive, creative manner all the time. You can force the development of such abilities with certain drugs, certain types of the yogas, and many other techniques, but you will create problems for yourself and others. Powers come naturally to you from the universal spirit when you have simply made yourself harmless and caring under all circumstances. To achieve this, you must first unselfishly use whatever normal abilities you have right now, in whatever situation you are in now. Just as an employer will promote a person who is excelling in working with the circumstances of his present position and demonstrating his readiness for greater responsibility, so does one advance in the universal company. What employer would promote someone who's doing a poor job? Or promote someone who cheats and attempts to get more power before they have earned it? No sane employer promotes people unless they deserve it, and neither does God. So seek first to make yourself worthy through developing those virtues of unselfish love, like patience, humility, understanding, always considering the best interest of others before yourself. Then hold on to these virtues constantly, preservingly, through your times of suffering. Such times are the testing times. When you have passed your test, then will you be given whatever extra abilities you need or material you need as you need them for the universal work without even trying to get them. And that is why I seem to be gaining new abilities even though I don't desire them. Yes, but what about the practice? We are taught methods of working in other realms and commanding such abilities and powers. These are not for you to personally use, Peniel. They are for making in you a better vehicle for the universal spirit to work through you. They are hierarchy, known when and what to do, and will use the abilities you have developed when it is appropriate within the will of God. You just need to open up the channels so you can be used. When you are through with your training, you will have the ability to channel powers that can level great cities or move a mountain. But you are not to use such power just to sit back, relax, and let it happen if it be the will of God, just by doing it through you. And it may never occur, or it may occur daily. It is not for us to decide. Finding your true path. You said, "It has been foretold that I will present the ancient Atlantean children's teachings to the world when I finally become an adept, a true teacher. And I do this. What should be the one most important thing I should say about walking a true course back to the One?" Was our discussion of just one important thing? There is much to say, but the most important ones, if you must limit them, are these. Remember the footsteps through the path of the rose bushes. Tell them, pray for, and find a true teacher, detailed in the next chapter. Work on transcending your separate self. Be ever vigilant regarding your thoughts, and stop feeding the monsters with your thoughts of selfishness and its illusion of separation, and practice the virtues of unselfish love with others and of like kind to displace selfishness and break the illusion of separateness. Yet there is much that people must suffer, much work people will need to do, and much they must decide inside themselves before they will even ask such things about their paths back to God. The spiritual seeker makes a series of steps before he even steps foot on his true spiritual path back to oneness with the universal. Obviously, they must first realize that they need to change and need to break free from old programming and behavior patterns. Next, they will need to realize they can change, regardless of how difficult or impossible it may seem. They must realize that they have free will and are only a slave to their programming and selfish desires so long as they allow themselves to be. One person gets to this point, then they must decide how and when they are going to go about changing. They must choose their path and choose to stop walking their old path in order to start up the new one. This process involves taking responsibility. Taking real responsibility, responsibility for their own life, for their own life direction, for a new life, and even more importantly, the ultimate responsibility, serving God and flowing with universal will. Zain's words rang through me like being in a tower of a cathedral as the bells were ringing. But the separate self wants to prevent you from doing this, so it will influence you to procrastinate at any cost. It will use any and every excuse to keep you from taking responsibility, even using responsibilities as an excuse to avoid your real responsibility. I remember a great quote that an elder student of mine showed me from a book. I believe it was called Illusions. It was fiction and had a book within a book called The Messiah's Handbook. The sayings went something like, "The best way to avoid responsibility is to say you have responsibilities." How true! I have seen so many seekers never evolve spiritually because they didn't want to break away from their responsibilities. They have jobs, commitments, contracts, relationships of all kinds. So many things that are more important than becoming unselfishly loving and serving God. The only real and great responsibilities. Or some say they will start their spiritual path right away, just as soon as they do such and such first. Of course, they never seem to complete such and such, or there is always another such and such around the corner. So they never start walking their true spiritual path. There is a profound ancient saying that goes, "Seek God first, and all else will come to you." Nothing could be more true. And nothing is more important than finding God. So, what if you become successful? What is it worth if you don't have real love and God in your life? So, what if you did break such and such commitment? What was the commitment worth without real love and God in your life? So, what if you didn't complete such and such? It is nothing compared to finding and serving God. All those things, all those kind of things are delays keeping you from changing, keeping you from being and doing what you are really supposed to do and be. There are all temporary things of this world. They won't last. Neither will they matter in the end. If you died tomorrow, will they stand over your grave and say, "He worked hard, kept his appointments, and supported his ex-wife according to the terms of their agreement. His alimony will be missed. His jokes in the pub will be missed. But on with our lives." Or will they say, "You will be missed in this world. The inner light you shined was a lamp for me and all who knew you. The love and kindness you spread changed my life and touched thousands of souls who were entrenched by your work. And in turn, some are carrying on the lamp so it may illuminate the path for others. Keep a seat in the next plane warm for us. We will be with you soon. Some of you who read this are stragglers who are already supposed to be or are still supposed to be leaders. You have fallen light workers who should have returned to the light before now. But you have allowed yourself to drag your feet and avoid your true responsibilities. You have very little time left to change yourself before the great changes are upon this world, and you become bound in darkness for ages. If you want to catch up, you must take rapid measures to attain the spiritual position you were supposed to have already taken. Or perhaps you are one of the survivors of the great changes who are reading this years later. One of the many decent people who survived the changes or are in the midst of them now. And the suffering is spiritually purifying you in spite of yourself. In either case, there is no time to delay. Every moment is precious. Don't squander it. There is no time for anything else anymore except your inner work or helping others with their inner work. Accept your real responsibilities. Drop everything now. Find your path and walk it now. Find your true teacher and get on with your transformation. Spend every moment of your remaining life in an all-out concentrated effort to change your life from one that is separate, self-oriented, to one that lives to serve and manifest the universal spirit. The great affirmation. As we walk our path, we should let our daily affirmations or prayer to the Infinite One be, "Your will be done, not mine, in me and through me." And we should not just say it, we should feel it and live it. Practice this, and one eternal day you may find that God's will be your will, as one no longer separate. You will realize I am, and your actions, your lifestyle, your being will reflect this. Your life will be as one giving like an endless stream of universal love flowing forth. rather than the empty, short-lived, endless cycle of wanting, trying to get, and fear, trying to avoid. Okay, that's the end of chapter 12. I've been reading The Children of the Law of One and the Lost Teachings of Atlantis by Jon Peniel. Highly recommend this book. I truly love it. Um, I ask for forgiveness for any mispronunciation of any words or the stumblings that I may have throughout the reading, but I know that you're enjoying it anyway. So until the next time, love and light, contemplate what you have heard, have truth within yourself. I know I am. Okay, so until next time.